Hello, I'm Dr. Terry James Gingrass, and this is Dr. G's ADHD Chat, the show trying to make the world safe for ADHDers. I tell you this every week, and maybe you get sick of it, but I'm a clinical psychologist, neuropsychologist, and a parent of a couple of ADHD kids, and I also married into a highly ADHD family. I have been learning about and working with ADHD for at least 4 decades, okay, maybe a little longer. But the things that we know as well, this is going to be my cut line for the whole day, I think. ADHD is genetic. You're born with it. It runs in your family. Da 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 da. How you adapt to it, how you adjust to it, is trained. Okay, if you're lucky, you have a mentor of some sort, whether it's a professional psychologist, or it's a coach, or it's maybe even a parent. Okay, which would be optimal, but frequently that doesn't happen. But today I want to talk about probably the hardest patients I have seen to work with, and those are the ones who are alienated. Now, alienated is not exactly an emotion. It's a decision that's probably largely based on emotion. Alienation is when you have isolated. You feel isolated from normal society, basically. Okay, and it's not a comfortable place to be. I mean, folks who are alienated don't trust anybody or anything. They don't trust police. They don't trust teachers. They don't trust coaches. They also don't trust psychologists. You got to work really hard to develop a trust relationship with somebody who's really alienated. And the whole, I mean, it's very difficult because they've decided nothing works. So everything sucks. Everything's bad. Everything's not going to ever happen again. They can't fix me. I can't fix myself. It's pretty much a lose-lose kind of situation, because all of us have had to trust something. You know, maybe it was the education system. Maybe it was a favorite coach, and I mean athletic coach. Okay, maybe back in the day you had a psychological coach, but that's a life coach. That's less likely, just because the whole field hadn't really grown up a lot then. But you have lost faith in the system if you are alienated. Nothing works, and you know the doctors are all lying to you. You know, the big pharma companies are fudging the data. The education system is designed to make us into flunkies in the factory. So on and so on and so forth. Treatment from ADHD, oh, that's baloney. You know, they want to give us drugs, and just to keep us quiet so we don't make too much trouble. Okay, you get somebody like this, and it's not a fun thing. But you've got to understand that, and a lot of times the presentation is anger. Okay, they're just angry. Even if underneath they're really depressed and feeling hopeless, they come across as angry because that's their power position. You can't get to me. You're just a tool of the system. And they're basically rudderless. They're floundering, but they're angry about it, so it doesn't look like they're helpless. They're angry frequently. They want everything faster. They're impatient. And they don't know how to win. Okay, they don't know how to get what they want out of life. And frankly, the suicide rate for really severely alienated people is surprisingly high. I don't know if it's surprisingly, it's high. That they just don't have um, a any. There's no escape, and so they do stuff trying to find escape. There's a lot of substance abuse, a lot of drugs and alcohol. And they do some pretty amazing. Be stoned all the time. 7 days a week, close to 20 hours a day, and it's they're likely to get into legal problems. They probably don't have a good relationship at home with anybody. They basically are the kids you see that are on the street, and that's never a healthy place to be. And so the deal with this, though, is that while ADHD is genetic, how you adapt to it is learned behavior. It is something that you adapt. How you adapt is trained. It's not something you were born with that you can't do anything about. It's something that you could do something about. But so many of us, I know for me personally, I was raised spare the rod and spoil the child kind of thing. And I have colleagues who are strict behaviorists who think, you reward the behavior you want, you punish the behavior, or negative reinforcement, as we say. Anyway, and you do that to the behavior you don't want. And the problem with behavior modification, and if you not familiar with what I'm talking about, that's just one of the schools of therapy. It's basically based on rewarding what you like and punish what you don't like, or negatively reinforce it to get the behavior you want. The problem is there are no limits. There are no guidelines on that. Like, I remember distinctly one mother. I was doing an intake, and it was just the mom, and she came in and very proudly told me she had just taken the door off of her son's bedroom, and he was sleeping in a bare room with no anything else in, no desk, no entertainment stuff, just a room with a mattress on the floor. And they had taken the door off. Of course, now she's in trouble. There's not much left to take away if you've already gone to those extremes. And that's the whole problem with the behavioral approach to things. And of course, there are more sophisticated behaviorists who will cut the line there somewhere. But, just the theory taken baldly is that it's going to work out best if you punish a lot the negative behavior, and frankly, taken to the extreme, like this lady was doing, was never going to work out well. I know a lady who's a dog trainer, and she says, reward the behavior you want, but watch out for punishment, because you never know how that's going to turn up later on in later behavior. And if you want to get a nice alienated kid, criticize the heck out of him or her. Punish them regularly. Take stuff away regularly. Never praise them. Don't ever let them feel good about something they've done. And you're likely to get an alienated kid. You're likely to get somebody who's doesn't trust anybody or anything in society. And basically, okay, how could he or she? Nothing is working for them. The school system, which is the first place that most of them, once they get out of the house, that's the first thing they have the first societal hurdle they have to jump. They have to, get reasonably good grades in school. But schools weren't designed for kids that don't have neurotypical brains. I'm not even sure they're really designed for people with neurotypical brains, but I tend to be a little harsh on that. The issue, we could do so much better with the amount of money we're spending in education. We could do so much better. We, the most, well, the most expensive thing you're going to do in your life is send your kid to college. And then the question is, how do you pick the college you're going to send them to? What major are they going to be in? What major would be good for them? All these questions, and nobody can give you answers. And yet we have the methodology to do that. Okay, and then you get people who can be successful in the education system. And, an ADHD kid who's not treated, who's punished a lot and criticized a lot, is going to feel alienated. If you wanted to train alienation, that's the way you would do it. And so these kids, they're not doing well in school. They're getting angry at school. School's not meeting their needs. They don't, when am I ever going to use algebra? Well, I always say, watch this old house and watch what the carpenter does when he's figuring out how to do a roof or something. That's algebra, babe. And it's also geometry and a little bit of trigonometry. But they are alienated from the school system. Being alienated from the school system, that's the primary way most of us got the training that gets us into our jobs eventually. But we don't have industrial arts in schools anymore, which is, I think, a shame. I think not everybody has to go to college to make a living. And ADHDers tend to be kinesthetic learners. They learn by doing hands-on things. So they would do, a lot of them anyway, would do wonderfully well in industrial arts. That's if they loved it or liked it. You get ADHDers who aren't into sort of building things with their hands, although many of them are, okay? But in school, the schools are set up for training people to digest a bunch of information, spit it back, and graduate. And if they are reasonably successful at that, they get to go to 4 more years of school and end up in life with a bachelor's degree in something and a whole lot of debt. Anyway, so the kid who's alienated probably doesn't make it that far. Although, ADHD kids tend to be pretty bright, so most of them could do well education-wise if they had the right treatment and the right training. They learned how to make the most of their abilities and minimize the effects of their disabilities, and they would do extremely well, or they would do much better and, be able to be reasonably successful in life. When you get one that's alienated, okay, they can't win at school. Odds are all us well-meaning parents are being too critical, possibly punishing too much, or negatively reinforcing too much, however you want to look at that. And so they don't have a lot of place to go to feel comfortable. And that's on us. Those of us who were raising kids before there was ADD as a diagnosis or ADHD as a diagnosis, I guess we have an excuse. All I know is, if you do one thing only with your child, praise them as often as you can. And don't do it phony baloney, do it, hey, nice job there, Thanks for doing the dishes. Thanks for, whatever. They've got to have some winning. They've got to feel like they can do some stuff. and people won't criticize them for it. And watch your tongue. I mean, I know I was a passive parent for my first two kids, and I just kind of, I reacted. I thought I had pretty good judgment and would know what I was doing. Um, but as I look back on it, I was more punishing them when they did wrong and less conscious of praising for when they did things right. And, that's tricky. You have to start doing that a lot more than most of us are doing it. Uh, anyway, and there are some tricks for that, but we'll talk about those at a later date. Okay, so alienation is dangerous, leads to substance abuse, leads to suicide, leads to breaking the law. It's just, and it's a failure in the whole system, really, to adapt and adjust to the kid. And we as parents have got to be on our guard. Being a parent of an ADHD kid requires way more of a parent than just a neurotypical kid. You have to plan, you have to think about things, you have to observe more, you have to understand what you're seeing, all those sorts of things that require more what I call strategic parenting, which means you have to plan it ahead as you want. You win when they graduate from college, say. You don't win just because you won the argument and they go in and make their bed, sort of. That's tactical, and that's not what you're trying to do, okay? You want to be strategic and see the long-term consequences of what you do. So if you have an alienated child, it's tricky to get them back. They typically will need to be in some kind of treatment. And you got to be careful with that, because you can't have a therapist who's a marshmallow, and you can't have a therapist who's a strict disciplinarian type drill sergeant in a polo shirt. So be careful about all that. I mean, be careful about everything, my God. Yes, I know. But don't let him feel like nothing works. He's got to have some wins in his life. And I say he because most of them are boys, but you can have girls that also feel the same way. So I'm Dr. Terry James Gingras. My website is terrygingrasphd.com. Go there, sign up for, sign up for my Facebook, sign up for my YouTube. I've got a podcast, sign up for that. And let's try to do better. We'll catch you next week. Bye.